Let me tell you a story about Ascension Technologies. Now, if you live anywhere near the coast, you've heard the name.
They build the systems that run the systems, you know? They're the brains behind the brainiacs. The main headquarters, the one I used to guard, it wasn't just an office building. It was a palace carved out of steel and glass, sitting right there on the edge of Silicon Valley, shining under the California sun like a giant, cold diamond. My name is Frank Miller. I worked the graveyard shift. I saw things most people never did. The way the billion-dollar ideas looked when they were just lines of code on a screen, the way the executives looked when they thought nobody was watching, and the way the cleaning crew looked when they were trying to keep that diamond polished. I was security team lead, 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. My job was simple: keep the bad guys out and make sure the good guys didn't steal the company pens. It paid the bills, but it didn't feed the soul, if you catch my drift. The owner of all this, the man who signed my checks, was Elias Thorne. Thorne didn't just have money, he had kingdoms built on money. He was one of those guys who looked like he was born wearing a $1,000 suit. He spoke in quiet, measured tones, and everything he touched, they said, turned to technological gold. But every kingdom, even one built on algorithms, needs people to scrub the floors. That's where Maria came in. Maria was part of the night cleaning crew. She was small, strong, and moved with that tired efficiency that only comes from working 2 jobs since you were 18. She cleaned the executive floors, the 21st through the 25th, Thorne's private domain. She didn't speak much English, and I didn't speak much Spanish, so our interactions were usually limited to a nod, a quick flash of her badge, and the rhythmic squeak of her supply cart rolling across the polished marble. Maria was a fixture, just like the expensive modern art hanging in the lobby. You noticed her presence, but you didn't really see her. Then, about 6 months into my tenure, Maria started bringing her daughter. Now, corporate policy at Ascension Technologies was ironclad. No non-employees past 7 p.m. unless they were C-suite or authorized guests. But the cleaning service was a contractor, and sometimes desperate measures were needed. Maria couldn't afford a sitter late at night, and her apartment was an hour away by bus. The first time I saw the girl, I almost blew the whistle. She was sitting in the corner of the employee lounge on the ground floor, tucked behind a stack of unused coffee filters. She looked maybe 17, maybe 18. She wasn't dressed for this world. Maria wore dark, sturdy contractor scrubs. The daughter wore faded jeans and a sweatshirt that looked like it had been washed 1,000,000 times. She had a massive, worn backpack at her feet, and she was hunched over a thick textbook, the kind with tiny print and complicated diagrams. She didn't have a phone out, no earbuds, no distractions. She was just working. I walked past her, my heavy boots echoing in the quiet hallway. I paused just outside the lounge door, pretending to check a camera feed on my tablet. Maria came rushing out of the nearest supply closet, wiping her hands on a rag. She saw me looking at the lounge. Her face went pale. That fear, that specific gut-wrenching fear of a single mother trying not to lose her low-paying job, it was immediate and painful to watch. She rushed over to me, murmuring apologies in rapid-fire Spanish, gesturing toward her. Daughter, Elena. I held up a hand. Tranquila, Maria, I said, using the one Spanish word I knew that mattered in that moment. She's just studying. Is she yours? Maria nodded vigorously, her eyes wide. She stays on the first floor. She doesn't go past the turnstiles. She doesn't touch anything. She's quiet. I kept my voice low. You understand, Maria. I didn't see her. Maria's relief was so profound it made her shoulders sag. She touched her chest and whispered, Gracias, señor. Muchas gracias. And that was the start of it. For the next few weeks, Elena became a part of the night furniture. She was always there, quiet, focused, tucked into a corner of the deserted ground floor lounge, or sometimes, if Maria was working close, in the small sterile break room near the freight elevators. She never caused trouble. She never asked for anything. She was just waiting for her mother to finish her grueling shift. I got used to seeing her. Sometimes I'd see the title of the book she was reading. It wasn't a high school novel. It was something dense, something about advanced calculus or theoretical physics. Stuff that made my brain hurt just looking at the cover. I remember seeing one title, Computational Fluid Dynamics, Modeling the Future. This kid wasn't doing remedial math. I started leaving the lights on in the lounge a little longer than necessary. I'd walk by and sometimes catch her eye. She'd give a nervous, tiny smile and then immediately look back down at her work, like she was afraid the very act of acknowledging me would make her disappear. I didn't talk to her, not really. I kept that professional distance. I was a security guard. She was the maid's daughter. We operated on different planes of existence, even when we were standing 10 feet apart. Then, the envelope arrived. It was a Tuesday night, around 1 a.m. I was in my small secure office near the main server room, reviewing the access logs. My supervisor, a guy named Rick, who reported directly to Thorne's chief of staff, walked in. Rick didn't usually visit the night shift unless a fire alarm went off or a delivery truck was stuck in the loading dock. He was carrying a thick, unmarked manila envelope. "Frank, sit down. We need to talk." "About compliance," Rick said, his voice flat and professional. I leaned back in my chair. "Everything checked out tonight, Rick. No breaches, no unauthorized access." Rick placed the envelope on my desk. It was heavy. "This isn't about breaches, Frank. It's about optics. It's about maintaining the ecosystem." I looked at the envelope. It wasn't sealed properly. I could see the edge of a stack of $100 bills inside. My stomach tightened. This wasn't standard procedure. "What is this, Rick?" Rick leaned closer, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper, even though we were alone in a soundproof room. "Mr. Thorne is very particular about boundaries, Frank. He pays top dollar for discretion and precision. His office, his floor, it needs to be pristine, untouched, and utterly compartmentalized." I nodded slowly. I knew Thorne was a control freak. "The cleaning crew," Rick continued, emphasizing the word crew with a hint of distaste. "They are necessary, but their personal lives, their families, they are not part of the Ascension footprint. They create liability and compromise the appearance of control." He tapped the envelope. "We've noticed the presence of Maria's daughter, Elena. We know she's just studying. But it's messy. It sets a poor precedent. We cannot have children of contractors wandering the facilities, even the common areas, for extended periods." I bristled. "She's quiet, Rick. She just waits for her mom. She doesn't bother anyone." "I know, Frank, but Thorne doesn't pay me to manage nuances. He pays me to manage results." Rick pushed the envelope closer. "This is a quarterly discretionary bonus. It's completely off the books, tax-free, Frank. Just a small token of gratitude from the Chief of Staff for your exemplary professionalism and adherence to strict corporate boundary protocols." I picked up the envelope. The paper felt crisp. I thumbed through the bills. It was $5,000. $5,000 just materialized on my desk. That was almost 2 months' rent for me. "What exactly is the protocol, Rick?" I asked, though I already knew. Rick smiled, a thin, meaningless executive smile. "The protocol is simple, Frank. You are paid to maintain security. You are paid to enforce the rules. You are not paid to be a babysitter, an advocate, or a friend to the contractor staff. You are paid to ignore her existence completely. She stays where she is, she doesn't move, and most importantly, you do not engage. You do not talk to her. You do not check on her. You maintain professional distance. If she causes any issue, you report it immediately, and Maria is gone." He paused, letting the weight of the money and the threat settle in the air. "You understand, Frank? You were paid to ignore the maid's daughter." I looked at the cash. My conscience immediately started yelling at me. Elena was a good kid. She was obviously bright, working hard under impossible circumstances. She was the definition of harmless. But $5,000. That money could fix the transmission in my old truck. It could cover the medical deductible my wife had racked up last fall. It was survival money. I swallowed hard, pushing down the shame. This was how the system worked. The powerful bought silence and invisibility from the powerless, and I was just one more cog in the machine. "I understand, Rick," I said, sliding the envelope into a locked drawer. Professional distance maintained. Rick clapped me on the shoulder, his job done. "Good man, Frank. Now back to those server logs." He left, and I sat there for a long time, staring at the closed drawer. The money felt dirty. It was a bribe wrapped up in a bonus. But I took it. I justified it by telling myself I wasn't hurting Elena. I was just ensuring her mother kept her job. If I made a fuss, Maria would be fired, and Elena would be out on the street anyway. This way, I could look the other way, and everyone survived. From that night on, my interactions with Elena changed completely. Before the money, I was subtly protective. I'd make sure the heating vent near her corner of the lounge was working. I'd leave a fresh coffee pot brewing, even though I knew she only drank water. After the money, I became a brick wall. I would walk past her, my eyes fixed straight ahead. If she looked up and offered that small, nervous smile, I wouldn't return it. My face was neutral, my posture rigid. I was the guard, and she was an unauthorized shadow. She noticed, of course. Kids are sharp. Within a week, the tentative smiles stopped. She stopped sitting in the main lounge and retreated further, usually into the narrow break room near the unused mail sorting area, where the fluorescent lighting was harsh and the air was cold. She stopped looking up when I walked by. She just kept her head down, absorbed in her immense textbooks, waiting for her mother. Sometimes a wave of guilt would hit me so hard it was physically painful. She was just a kid trying to study. But I'd remind myself of the transmission, of the deductible. The system had won. I was paid to ignore her, and I did. Life at Ascension Technologies continued its high-speed, high-stakes trajectory. The company was working on a project codenamed Genesis. It was whispered to be the largest, most complex infrastructure deal in the company's history. A completely new, ultra-secure operating system designed to run the entire financial network of a major foreign government. Thorne had staked his reputation and billions in future contracts on Genesis launching flawlessly. The pressure on the 25th floor, Thorne's executive suite, was palpable, even 200 feet below me. Developers were pulling 72-hour shifts. The smell of stale pizza and desperation hung in the air even after Maria had cleaned it away. Maria started working longer hours. Sometimes I wouldn't see her until 5 a.m., her face drawn and exhausted. Elena was there every night, now religiously in the cold break room reading. The launch date for Genesis was set for the following Monday. The whole company was on edge. If this worked, Ascension would cement its place as the undisputed leader in global secure computing. On Friday night, I arrived for my shift, and the tension was thick enough to chew. The security alarms weren't going off, but the people were. I saw Thorne himself pacing near the elevator banks at 11:30 p.m., something he never did. He was usually gone by 6 p.m., relaxing in his Malibu mansion. His face was pale, his tie was loose, and he was talking angrily into his phone, his voice too loud for the quiet lobby. I don't care about the source code, I care about the integrity. The system failed the final. Stress test, David. Failed. We launch in 60 hours. I kept my distance, walking quickly past him, pretending to be preoccupied with checking the main doors. The panic spread through the remaining staff like a virus. The lead engineers, usually swaggering with confidence, looked like they were attending their own funeral. They were huddled in conference rooms, shouting at each other in technical jargon I couldn't understand. But the tone was universally disastrous. I stopped one of the junior engineers, a nervous kid named Kyle, as he raced past me carrying a stack of server manuals. "Kyle, what's going on? Everything all right upstairs?" Kyle looked like he was about to cry. "It's Genesis, Frank. It's completely broken. The whole system collapsed during the final simulation. The core architecture is fundamentally unstable. We've been running diagnostics for 12 hours, and we can't find the source of the corruption. Thorn is going to kill us all." He didn't wait for my response, just sprinted down the hallway toward the data center. A fundamental flaw. A billion-dollar mistake. Thorn's empire was teetering on a bug they couldn't find. Over the next few hours, the atmosphere shifted from panic to despair. Thorn ordered a complete physical shutdown of the primary data center, a desperate move to prevent further data loss and force a manual restart. Around 3 a.m., Maria came downstairs to the main security desk to pick up fresh cleaning supplies. She looked completely spent. "Frank," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "El Jefe. Mr. Thorn, he is very bad mood. Very bad. He is yelling at everyone. They are drinking coffee and crying." I nodded. "It's a big problem, Maria. A massive system failure." Maria looked thoughtful for a second, then shook her head and started loading bottles of disinfectant onto her cart. As she was finishing up, Elena walked out of the break room. She didn't look at me, but she was carrying her heavy textbook and walking toward her mother. I saw the title again. Computational Fluid Dynamics. Maria kissed her daughter on the cheek and pointed toward the elevator. "Stay close, Elena. I must clean Mr. Thorn's office. It is a disaster up there." Elena nodded silently, her gaze sweeping over the scene. The defeated engineers slumped in the lobby chairs, the security consoles flashing red alerts for closed systems, and the overall air of corporate collapse. I watched them go. Maria took the service elevator up to the 25th floor. Elena trailed behind her, the heavy backpack slung over her shoulder, looking like a tiny, out-of-place student in the heart of a technological catastrophe. I went back to monitoring the feeds, feeling the grim satisfaction that comes when the arrogant rich finally get their comeuppance. Thorn had paid me to ignore the people who kept his world running, and now his world was crumbling. Around 4:30 a.m., Thorn's chief of staff, a man named Mr. Harrington, came storming down the main stairs, bypassing the elevator entirely. He was frantically waving his phone, shouting into the receiver, "We've lost the primary encryption key. We can't access the rollback protocols. The entire system is locked, and we can't even begin the manual patch. Thorn is losing his mind. Get me the lead cryptographer back here, now." He threw his phone onto a nearby couch and ran his hands through his hair. He looked like he'd aged 10 years in 4 hours. This was worse than I thought. They didn't just have a bug, they were locked out of their own system. I watched Harrington pace, a picture of elite misery. This was the moment where the guards became useless and the tech experts became gods or failures. I was contemplating making myself another cup of coffee when the intercom on my desk crackled to life. It was Maria. She was calling from the executive floor. Her voice was panicked, muffled, and laced with Spanish. "Frank! Frank! Ayuda! Mr. Thorn is shouting. He is throwing things. The room, the servers, they are broken." I grabbed my radio. "Maria, calm down. What exactly is happening?" He says the main console, the big screen, is black, and the little box, the one that flashes green, is red. He is saying they lost everything. He is calling the police. I sighed. Thorn was being dramatic. "Maria, just finish your cleaning and stay clear of the executives. I can't do anything about the computer problems." Just as I was about to sign off, I heard a different voice over the intercom. It was soft, clear, and young. "Elena. Mr. Frank, please listen. I need you to tell the man who is shouting that the problem is not a system corruption." I froze, my hand hovering over the mic switch. Elena was talking to me, breaking the rules, and I was about to get paid to shut her down. "Elena, you need to step away from the intercom. This is an executive matter," I said, my voice hard, professional. I felt the familiar pang of guilt, but the memory of the $5,000 was stronger. "Please, Mr. Frank. This is important. My mother told me about the problem. I saw the screen when I was cleaning the corner office. They are looking for a bug in the code, but the code is fine." Her voice was steady, utterly devoid of the fear Maria always carried. She sounded like a professor addressing a confused class. "Elena, I don't know what you're talking about. You need to wait for your mother." She ignored me completely. She was talking to the executives up there, through me. "Tell Mr. Thorne the issue is the configuration of the data stream. It's a physical problem, not a digital one. The system isn't corrupted, it's being starved. They reversed the input channel during the stress test rollback procedure. It's a simple I/O failure." I blinked. I/O failure? Input? Output? I knew what that meant, but this was a multi-billion-dollar system she was talking about. Could it really be something so simple? I looked down the hall. Harrington was still pacing, frantic, shouting about encryption keys. I took a deep breath. I was paid to ignore her. I was paid to keep her silent. I flipped the mic switch. "Elena, if you don't hang up right now, I have to report this. You are interfering with company operations." There was a brief silence on the other end, and then I heard Maria's panicked voice hiss, "Elena, Colity. Elena, be quiet." Then Elena's voice returned, firmer this time. She sounded exasperated, like she was dealing with truly thick-headed people. "Mr. Frank, they are wasting precious time. They need to check the physical patch panel in server room beta, rack 4, port 19. If they reverse the green and blue cables, the input flow will be throttled, making the system read as unstable, even if the code is perfect." She was giving specific technical instructions that sounded precise and terrifyingly plausible. My heart was pounding now. If she was right, she had just diagnosed the problem that Thorne's entire team of six-figure engineers couldn't solve. If she was wrong, I was about to lose my job for relaying information from the maid's daughter. I looked at Harrington, who was now leaning against the wall, defeated. I flipped the mic switch again, speaking only to Elena. "How do you know that?" I saw the schematic on the desk earlier. They were running a rollback procedure, and the original technician had handwritten notes in the margin about a known vulnerability with that specific port configuration. If the rollback wasn't executed perfectly, the system defaults to the throttled I/O. She hadn't just glanced at the screen. She had understood the underlying infrastructure, the handwritten notes, and the potential failure point. This wasn't a kid doing homework. This was a genius standing in a cleaning closet on the 25th floor. I made the decision in about 3 seconds. The $5,000 felt like dust in my pocket compared to the potential catastrophe unfolding upstairs. I had been paid to ignore her, but I was also paid to secure the building. And right now, the greatest threat to Ascension Technologies wasn't outside. It was inside. The company's own ignorance. I stood up, walked out of my office, and approached Harrington. "Mr. Harrington," I said, loud enough to cut through his misery. He barely looked at me. "Unless you have the key to the main server, Frank, leave me alone." "I think I know what the problem is," I stated simply. Harrington stared at me, disbelief warring with fatigue. "You? The security guard? Are you going to tell me to reboot the modem? It's not a code issue. It's a physical configuration failure. I/O reversal." Harrington laughed, a dry, bitter sound. "We have PhDs upstairs, Frank. They've been over every line of code. It's the patch panel and server room beta. Rack 4, port 19. Check the green and blue cables. They might be reversed." Harrington narrowed his eyes. "Where did you get that ridiculous idea?" I hesitated. I couldn't betray Elena, and I certainly couldn't mention the bribe. I overheard a conversation between two engineers earlier, sir. They were discussing the rollback procedure and potential manual errors. I just remembered the detail. It was a lie, but a plausible one. Harrington hesitated. He was desperate. He had nothing to lose. He grabbed his phone again. "Fine, Frank. You just bought yourself a minute of my time. If you're wrong, you're on the street by dawn." He called the team on the 25th floor. "Listen up. Stop hunting the code. Send a runner down to Beta. Check the patch panel, rack 4, port 19. Look for reversed input cables, green and blue. Now." The silence that followed felt eternal. I stood there, watching Harrington, waiting for the inevitable shout of "false alarm" and the subsequent termination of my employment. A minute passed. 2 minutes. Then the voice of the lead engineer, David, crackled over Harrington's phone, loud and utterly stunned. "Mr. Harrington, you are not going to believe this. They were reversed. The green and blue cables were reversed. It was a manual error during the rollback process 10 hours ago. We just flipped them." Harrington's jaw dropped. Then another voice, full of relief and disbelief. "The primary console just came back online. The data stream is stable. The stress test is running perfectly. We're clean. We're 100% operational." The silence in the lobby was replaced by a wave of ecstatic, relieved shouting coming from the speaker. The billion-dollar mistake wasn't a flaw in Thorne's genius. It was a sloppy wiring job. Harrington looked at me, his eyes wide, his face flushed with adrenaline. "Frank, how in the hell did you know that?" I maintained my composure, trying to look like a hero, not an accomplice. "Just a good memory for technical details, sir." He didn't buy it, but he didn't care. The Genesis project was saved. "Get upstairs, Frank. Now. Thorne needs to see you." I took the elevator up to the 25th floor. The atmosphere was completely transformed. The engineers weren't crying anymore. They were hugging. Thorne was standing next to the enormous multi-screen console, which was now flashing healthy, reassuring green lights. Thorne turned to me as I walked in, his expensive suit rumpled but his eyes blazing with renewed power. "Miller, you saved us. That simple? A reversed cable?" He shook his head, unable to comprehend the simplicity of the solution versus the scale of the failure. "I owe you, Miller. Name your price." I looked past him, into the corner of the vast, luxurious office. Maria was there, pushing her cart, trying to look invisible, and next to her, standing quietly, was Elena. She had her textbook tucked under her arm, her eyes fixed on the floor. She was waiting for her mother to finish cleaning the mess left by the executive she had just rescued. Thorne followed my gaze. He saw Maria. He saw Elena. He frowned. "What is that girl doing here, Miller? I thought I made it clear to security that we don't allow family members on this floor." My $5,000 flashed in my mind. The money was still in the drawer downstairs. I thought about the professional distance. I thought about the shame. I looked straight at Elias Thorne, the man who owned kingdoms, and I knew what I had to say. "Sir," I said, my voice cutting through the celebratory chatter, "that girl is Elena. She is Maria's daughter, and she is the reason Ascension Technologies is still in business." Thorne stared at me, utterly confused. Maria looked terrified, shrinking next to her. Cart. Elena finally looked up, her expression calm yet wary. "What are you talking about, Miller? The security guard is taking credit for finding the error?" Thorne scoffed, turning back to the lead engineer. "David, who actually found the flaw?" David, the lead engineer who had been minutes away from being fired, looked sheepish. He glanced at me, then at Elena, then back at Thorne. "Sir, the information came through Frank, but it was highly specific, pinpoint accurate. It was about the I/O configuration vulnerability that only a few people would know about, or someone who had read the schematic notes." Thorne's focus returned to me. "Miller, you read the schematic notes?" I shook my head slowly, keeping my eyes on Elena. "No, sir, she did." I gestured toward the maid's daughter. She saw the schematic on a desk while her mother was cleaning. She remembered the handwritten note about the specific port failure. She diagnosed the billion-dollar mistake from the break room on the first floor. The silence in the room was absolute. The celebration died. Every single person, from Elias Thorne to the lowest junior analyst, stared at Elena, the girl in the faded sweatshirt, the daughter of the cleaning lady. Thorne looked livid, but not because of the mistake. He was livid because the solution had come from the absolute bottom of his corporate hierarchy, from someone he had paid me to ignore. "This is preposterous," Thorne finally spat out. "A child? Reading cleaning schedules, not schematics." Elena took a small, hesitant step forward, clutching her textbook. She didn't raise her voice, but the confidence in her tone was undeniable. "The vulnerability was tied to the 40-pin ribbon cable assembly used in the initial rollout, Mr. Thorne. It's a design flaw that creates a brief, recursive loop when the polarity is reversed during manual patching. The original technician, Mr. Henderson, noted it on page 47 of the physical manual. It was a simple diagnostic that anyone paying attention to the infrastructure could have seen." She wasn't pleading or explaining. She was stating fact. And she knew the name of the technician who wrote the note. Thorne was speechless. His mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. The sheer humiliation of being saved by the person he had deemed invisible was crushing him. I stepped forward, putting myself slightly between Thorne and Elena, protecting her from the inevitable explosion. "Sir," I said, "I was paid to ignore her. I took the money. But you were wrong to try and erase her. She just saved your company. And now I have to make a choice." I reached into my pocket, pulling out my wallet. I took out the $5,000 Rick had given me. I had withdrawn it earlier that day, planning to pay the deductible. I walked over to the nearest table and slammed the cash down. "I quit, Mr. Thorne, effective immediately, and I'm leaving your dirty money right here. I'm not being paid to ignore this girl anymore." Maria gasped, covering her mouth with her hand. Elena looked at me, a flicker of pure surprise in her eyes. Thorne finally found his voice, high-pitched, with fury. "You cannot quit, Miller. You just saved my company. I will promote you. I will double your salary." "You asked me to name my price, sir," I said, looking at Elena. "My price is respecting the people who actually know what they're doing, regardless of what uniform they wear, and you clearly don't know how to do that." I paused, letting the weight of the moment settle. "And if you think I'm walking away from this, Mr. Thorne, you're wrong. I'm walking away with her." I pointed to Elena. "She shouldn't be waiting in a cold break room. She should be in a university lab, solving problems that actually matter." Thorne looked at me, then at Elena, the realization dawning in his eyes. He hadn't just lost a security guard, he had lost the opportunity to recruit a prodigy, and he had driven her away with his own arrogance and disdain. "Elena," I said gently, "you and your mother need to gather your things. We are leaving Ascension Technologies." Maria rushed over, pulling Elena close, murmuring frantic questions. I didn't wait for Thorne's response. I turned and walked out of the executive suite, the sound of my heavy boots echoing on the polished floor, heading toward the elevator. As the doors closed, I heard Thorne's enraged roar behind me, but I didn't look back. I had my truck keys in my hand, and the knowledge that I had finally done the right thing. $5,000 too late, but right nonetheless. End of part 1. The elevator ride down from the 25th floor was the longest commute of my life. Maria was practically shaking, whispering prayers and apologies in Spanish, clutching Elena's arm like she was afraid the glass walls of the elevator would shatter and expose them to Thorne's rage. "Dios mío, Frank, mi trabajo," she kept repeating. My job. Elena, however, was a statue. She stood there, backpack strapped tight, looking not at the floor indicator, but straight ahead, her mind clearly already somewhere else, probably back on that I.O. failure she'd solved. "Maria, look at me," I said, keeping my voice low and firm. "That job was killing you. Literally. You were working 18 hours a day for a man who thought you were less important than the lobby ferns. You're done with that." "But the money, Frank. The money is gone now." I nodded. I knew. I had just traded my steady paycheck and $5,000 for a clear conscience and an unemployment application. But when I looked at Elena, who was now quietly turning the pages of her textbook, I knew I'd made the only choice I could live with. When we hit the ground floor, the place was still buzzing, even at 5 a.m. Engineers were pouring out of the data center, high-fiving each other, celebrating the saved Genesis project. Nobody looked at us. They were too busy reveling in their own survival. We walked right out the front door and into the cool, pre-dawn air of Silicon Valley. I drove them home in my old, rattling Ford Ranger. It took us an hour, navigating from the pristine corporate parks to the crowded, working-class neighborhood where Maria and Elena shared a tiny apartment above a dry cleaner. "I'll come back later. Today, Maria," I told her as they got out. "Don't worry about the job. We'll figure out the rent. But we need to talk about Elena. We need a plan." Maria looked doubtful, exhausted, but she nodded. Elena just gave me that small, serious nod she always did, the one that said, "I hear you. Now get out of the way so I can work." I drove home feeling lighter than I had in months, even though my bank account was about to feel a lot heavier. I'd been home for maybe an hour, trying to explain to my wife why I'd just quit the best-paying security gig I ever had, when the phone rang. It was Rick, my old supervisor. "Miller, you idiot. What in the hell did you do?" Rick's voice was high-pitched, vibrating with panic. "I resigned, Rick. I left the money on the table. You saw the access logs. I'm not authorized past the gate now. The money, Frank, that was petty cash. Thorne is talking about intellectual property theft. He's asking why you were communicating with unauthorized personnel on the executive floor. He wants to know who the hell told you about the cables." I told him, Rick. Elena did. The maid's daughter. She read the schematic notes. Rick was silent for a moment, absorbing the sheer ridiculousness of the corporate reality he was facing. "You threw away your pension for a cleaning lady's kid? Thorne is offering a massive bonus to anyone who can bring that girl back. He wants to hire her, Frank. He wants to control the narrative. He can't have the world know his billion-dollar project was saved by someone he paid us to ignore. He had his chance, Rick. Tell him I'm not interested in his bonus and Elena isn't for sale. You are making a massive enemy, Frank. Thorne doesn't lose. He will bury you." "Maybe," I said, hanging up the phone. I knew Rick was right. Thorne wasn't just a rich guy. He was a force of nature. He could make problems disappear with a single phone call. I had to move fast. I spent the morning researching. I didn't know anything about getting a genius into college, especially one who likely didn't have the standard high school paperwork. Elena was clearly a prodigy, but the American education system doesn't care about raw brilliance. It cares about transcripts, GPAs, and standardized test scores. Around noon, I drove back to Maria's apartment. I brought a box of donuts and a thermos of coffee. We sat down at their tiny kitchen table, which was covered in Elena's massive, intimidating textbooks. "All right, Elena," I started. "We need to talk about college. Where do you want to go? What do you want to study?" She looked up from a book titled Advanced Quantum Field Theory. She looked like she was 19 going on 40, so serious and focused. "I want to study computational physics and applied mathematics," she said, her English slightly accented but perfect. "I have been accepted provisionally into a small online program, but it is not rigorous enough. I need a lab environment. I need access to advanced computing resources." "What about a dream school?" I pushed. She shrugged, pointing vaguely toward the west. "Stanford or Caltech. The resources there are unparalleled for my field." I whistled softly. Stanford. That's the big leagues, kid. And it costs a fortune. Do you have transcripts? SAT scores? Maria broke in, wringing her hands. She finished high school online, Frank. We moved too many times. She took the general equivalency test, but the college applications, they ask for money, for essays, for letters of recommendation from teachers she never met. This was the hurdle. Elena was a diamond, but she was buried under layers of bureaucracy and poverty. The system wasn't built for people who bypass the traditional pipeline. Okay, I said, taking a bite of a donut. We're not going through the front door. We're going through the back window. I knew one person who might be able to help us scale this wall. When I was a much younger security guard, before Ascension, I worked for a few years guarding the campus of a mid-sized state university in Northern California. I got to know some of the professors who worked late. One of them was Dr. Alan Albright, the former dean of engineering. He was a tough old bird, retired now, but he had a reputation for cutting through red tape if he smelled real talent. I tracked him down to a retirement community near Santa Cruz. I called him up, reintroduced myself, and told him I had a favor to ask, a big one. He agreed to meet me, next afternoon at a small independent coffee shop near his home. The next day, I picked up Elena. Maria was nervous but insisted Elena go. This is your chance, mija. Don't waste it. Elena wore the same faded jeans and sweatshirt. She looked utterly out of place in the trendy coffee shop standing next to me, a burly, unemployed security guard. Dr. Albright arrived right on time. He was sharp, wearing a tweed jacket despite the California heat, and his eyes were skeptical. "Frank Miller," he said, shaking my hand. "You look heavier. And what's this about quitting the high-life gig at Ascension? You said you brought me a prodigy. I get 20 calls a month from parents trying to sell me their kid's genius. Make it quick." "Dr. Albright, this is Elena. She just saved Ascension Technologies from a multi-billion-dollar systems failure." Albright raised an eyebrow. "Oh, really? The Genesis project? That's all over the technical news. They're calling it a miracle recovery. What did she do? Pray tell? Reboot the server?" I let Elena answer. I stepped back, becoming the guard again, watching her. Elena didn't flinch under his scrutiny. She placed her massive textbook on the table, opened it to a page full of equations, and spoke with calm authority. "The failure was not a code corruption, Dr. Albright. It was a physical I/O throttling caused by a reversed 40-pin ribbon cable in server room beta. The system defaults to a recursive data loop under that specific polarity reversal, causing a critical stability report that mimics a core algorithm failure." Albright stopped stirring his coffee. His eyes narrowed, not in skepticism, but in sharp, professional attention. "That level of detail implies you didn't just guess, young lady. That implies you were privy to the schematic notes, or you understand the architecture of the 40-pin assembly." "I saw the notes," Elena confirmed. "But the issue is fundamental fluid dynamics applied to computational flow. The data flow, when throttled and reversed, behaves exactly like a fluid hitting a bottleneck. The pattern of instability was predictable based on the flow rate." She then spent the next 5 minutes explaining, using terms like recursive bottleneck and differential equations governing computational throughput, making my head spin. She spoke less like a student and more like a senior architect explaining a design flaw to a client. When she finished, Dr. Albright put his spoon down with a soft clink. He didn't look at me. He only looked at Elena. "You're right," he said, his voice quiet. "That is precisely the kind of low-level physical error that high-level software engineers always overlook. They see code. You see infrastructure." He paused. "So, you want to go to Stanford, Miss Elena?" "Yes, sir. You have no transcripts, no official test scores, no money, and no powerful family name to open doors. Stanford's acceptance rate is under 4%. They won't even look at an application without the proper papers. I know the challenges, Elena replied simply. Dr. Albright sighed, rubbing his temples. You are the kind of raw talent we used to look for before we became obsessed with standardized metrics. I can't get you into Stanford through the front door, Frank, but I can get her in front of people who can recognize genius when they see it. He pulled out a thick leather notebook. We're bypassing the admissions committee. We're going straight to the department head of computational physics at the University of California, Berkeley. My old rival, Dr. Vivian Lee. She hates bureaucracy even more than I do. We're not asking for admission. We're asking for an interview. This was better than I could have hoped for. What do we need to do? I asked. She needs to study for the GRE, the graduate exam, and she needs to do it fast. If she aces it, I can use that score as leverage. And Frank, you need to be her advocate. Get her access to resources, get her away from the dry cleaners and into a library. And so, the mission began. I cashed out the last of my meager savings. We found a small, cheap tutoring center near Berkeley that had old GRE prep books and offered computer lab access for a small hourly fee. For the next 2 weeks, my life revolved around Elena's schedule. I would drive her to the center every day. While I sat in the truck listening to talk radio and worrying about rent, she would bury herself in algorithms and practice tests. Maria, meanwhile, was frantically looking for new cleaning jobs, terrified that Thorne would blacklist her from every major company in the valley. And Thorne was definitely still active. 3 days after I quit, a very well-dressed man showed up at Maria's apartment. He was a lawyer from Thorne's firm and he had a briefcase full of documents. I happened to be there, helping Maria look over a contract for a new, small office cleaning gig. The lawyer, Mr. Denton, was slick. He didn't even look at me. He addressed Maria directly in Spanish, flawless and condescending. Senora, Mr. Thorne understands the inconvenience of your recent termination. He is prepared to offer you a substantial settlement, $100,000, to cover your distress and ensure your silence regarding the internal operations of Ascension Technologies. Maria gasped. $100,000 was a lifetime, of cleaning for her. What does he want? I asked, stepping forward. Mr. Denton finally looked at me, a wrinkle of disgust on his face. Mr. Thorne is also prepared to offer Ms. Elena a highly paid, non-disclosed consulting position, effective immediately. She will not be required to work, merely to be available for quarterly meetings. This will secure her future. He wants to buy her, I stated flatly. He wants to recognize her talent and compensate her appropriately, Denton corrected smoothly. In exchange, she will sign a comprehensive non-disclosure and non-compete agreement, ensuring that her knowledge of the Genesis architecture remains proprietary to Ascension. It was a brilliant maneuver. Thorne wasn't trying to punish Elena. He was trying to cage her. He wanted to control her future and prevent her from ever sharing her brilliance with a competitor, or, worse, a university that might hire her away. Maria looked at the contract, her eyes shining with desperate hope. Frank, this is so much money. We could go home. We could buy a house. No, Elena said, closing her textbook with a decisive snap. She spoke directly to the lawyer, her voice cutting through the tension. Tell Mr. Thorne that my knowledge is not a commodity to be warehoused. I will not sign a non-compete clause that limits my ability to pursue advanced research. Denton smiled, a shark showing its teeth. Ms. Elena, you are a minor. Your mother must sign. Maria looked from the contract to her daughter. The struggle on her face was agonizing. Security versus freedom. I put my hand on Maria's shoulder. Maria, that money is poison. If Elena signs this, she's Thorne's property forever. She won't be a consultant, she'll be a captive. She won't go to Berkeley or Stanford. She'll be stuck waiting for Thorne's quarterly phone call, doing exactly what he tells her to do. Maria looked at the lawyer, then at Elena's determined face. She took a deep, shaky breath, picked up the contract, and handed it back to Denton. "No, senor. We do not sell my daughter's mind." Denton's smile vanished. "You are making a grave mistake, senora. Mr. Thorne will not be pleased with this refusal." "He will have to be displeased," I said, opening the door for him. "The answer is no. Now get out of here, Denton." The lawyer left, his expensive shoes clicking angrily down the stairs. That confrontation solidified our team. We were officially at war with Elias Thorne. Elena took her GRE 3 days later. I waited in the parking lot, nervous as a father at a delivery room door. When she walked out, she was calm, almost bored. "How was it?" I asked, trying to sound casual. "Predictable," she said, getting into the truck. The quantitative section was elementary. The verbal was challenging, as English is my second language, but I feel I performed well. 2 days later, the email arrived at the public library address we were using. Her score was in. She had scored a perfect 170 on the quantitative section, a perfect score, and a 162 on the verbal, in the 90th percentile globally. Her combined score put her in the top 1% of test takers, including native English speakers. I printed the results and drove straight to Dr. Albright's house. He looked at the printout, whistled, and then smiled, a genuine, warm smile. "Frank, you weren't kidding. This opens the door. Berkeley will see this. They can waive the undergraduate transcripts based on this performance alone." He made a phone call right there, speaking in rapid-fire academic language to Dr. Vivian Lee at Berkeley. "Vivian, I have her score right here. Perfect quant. She's 18, self-taught, and she just diagnosed the Genesis failure that cost Thorne 48 hours of panic. Yes, that, Genesis. Look, I want you to meet her. I'm not asking for a favor. I'm asking you to protect the future of your department. You need this kid." He hung up, beaming. "We have an interview, Frank, next Friday, with Dr. Lee herself. She wants Elena to come prepared to present a technical paper on the I/O bottleneck theory." Elena had exactly 7 days to write a graduate-level paper. I drove Elena back to the tutoring center. She didn't look excited or overwhelmed. She looked determined. "I need quiet, Frank," she said, "and I need access to peer-reviewed journals on computational physics. Can you get me a temporary library card at the Berkeley Main Library?" "Consider it done," I said. The next week was a blur of frantic research and writing. Elena worked 18 hours a day. Maria and I monitored the perimeter, worried that Thorne would try to interfere. And we were right to worry. On Thursday evening, the night before the interview, I was driving Elena back to her apartment. We stopped at a red light about 3 blocks from her building. Suddenly, a sleek black SUV pulled up right next to my old Ford Ranger. The windows were heavily tinted. The key passenger window of the SUV slowly slid down, revealing the face of Elias Thorne himself. He looked tired, but his eyes were sharp, calculating. He ignored me completely and spoke directly to Elena in the passenger seat. "Elena," he said, his voice quiet, measured, the same tone he used when discussing billions of dollars. "I heard you refused the settlement. That was foolish, but I admire your ambition." Elena turned to face him, her expression unreadable. "I am prepared to offer you something far better than $100,000, Thorne continued. "I will personally fund your entire education at MIT, starting next semester. Full tuition, housing, stipend. You will never have to worry about money again." My heart hammered against my ribs. MIT. That was the dream of dreams. "What is the condition, Mr. Thorne?" Elena asked, her voice steady. "The condition is simple," Thorne replied, smiling thinly. "You withdraw your application from Berkeley. You sign an exclusivity clause agreeing to work for Ascension Technologies immediately upon graduation. And you leave Frank Miller behind. He is a distraction, a liability." Thorne looked at me now, a flash of pure hatred in his eyes. He is a man who throws away opportunity, Elena. Don't let him drag you down." The light turned green. The cars behind us started honking. Elena looked at Thorne, then at the thick textbook in her lap, and then at me. "Mr. Thorne," she said, speaking clearly and calmly above the traffic noise, "you paid Mr. Miller to ignore me. Now you are paying him to remove me from your influence. You have demonstrated that you only value people when they are useful to you, or when you can control them." She paused, delivering the final blow with the precision of a master surgeon. "My research is about freedom of data flow, Mr. Thorne. I cannot study freedom under the patronage of a jailer. I prefer Berkeley, and I prefer the company of a man who respects my mind, even when he has been paid not to." Thorne's smile vanished. The color drained from his face. He didn't say another word. He slammed his window shut, and the black SUV shot forward through the intersection, disappearing into the traffic. I sat there, gripping the steering wheel, my whole body trembling with adrenaline and pride. She had faced down the king of Silicon Valley and won. "You know, Elena," I said, pulling the Ranger forward, "you just turned down a full ride to MIT." "I know, Frank," she said, opening her textbook. "Now please focus on the road. I need to review my conclusion for the presentation tomorrow." The next day, we drove to Berkeley. The campus was sprawling and beautiful, buzzing with intellectual energy. I waited in the lobby of the physics department while Elena went inside for her interview. Dr. Albright was waiting with me. He looked nervous, too. "This is it, Frank," he muttered. "If she blows this, she's back to the tutoring center. Lee is ruthless. She'll tear that paper apart." An hour and a half later, the door opened. Elena walked out, followed by a severe-looking woman with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense bun. Dr. Vivian Lee. Dr. Lee looked at me, then at Dr. Albright. She didn't smile. "Mr. Miller," Dr. Lee said, her voice dry, "you can tell Mr. Thorne that he missed his chance. Ms. Elena is not just brilliant. She is fearless. She challenged 3 of my senior faculty on the fundamentals of computational modeling. She is exactly what this department needs." She turned to Elena. "We are offering you immediate admission, Ms. Elena. We will waive the undergraduate requirements based on your GRE score and the quality of your paper. We are also arranging a full research fellowship, which includes tuition, housing, and a stipend. You start in the fall. Congratulations." Elena finally, truly smiled. It wasn't the small, nervous smile of the maid's daughter. It was the radiant, confident smile of a physicist who had just found her place in the universe. I felt a massive weight lift off my chest. We had done it. We had navigated the bureaucracy and beaten the billionaire. "Thank you, Dr. Lee," Elena said, reaching out to shake her hand. Dr. Lee's eyes softened slightly. "You should thank Mr. Miller. He was your champion, and you should also thank yourself for refusing to be silenced." We left Berkeley, the acceptance letter tucked safely into Elena's backpack, right next to the massive, worn textbook. The drive back was filled with planning and hope. Maria was ecstatic when we called her. She cried, laughed, and immediately started packing Elena's very few belongings. But the story wasn't over. Thorne hadn't disappeared, he had retreated. And when men like Thorne retreat, they don't give up. They just find a bigger weapon. 2 days after Elena's acceptance, I got a registered letter delivered to my house. It wasn't from Thorne's lawyers. It was from the Department of Homeland Security. I tore it open, my hands shaking. It was a formal notification of a federal inquiry into unauthorized access and potential espionage concerning the Ascension Technologies Genesis project. The letter explicitly named Elena and, chillingly, mentioned me as a co-conspirator who facilitated the unauthorized access to proprietary data. Thorne wasn't trying to buy Elena anymore. He was trying to erase her, and me along with her. He was using the power of the federal government to punish the people who dared to expose his failure. The last line of the letter printed in stark black ink, was the most terrifying. Ms. Elena, Maria's last name, is hereby required to report to the DHS field office in San Jose within 72 hours for questioning regarding her residency status and access to classified infrastructure information. This wasn't just about a job anymore. This was about deportation and prison. Thorne had played his final, dirtiest card. He was weaponizing Elena's immigrant status and my role as the security guard who facilitated her presence. I looked at the letter, then at the phone. I had to call Dr. Albright and Dr. Lee. I had to tell Elena that the dream was already turning into a nightmare. We had fought the corporate giant, but now we were facing the government itself, all because I had been paid to ignore the maid's daughter and then chose not to. End of Part 2. I looked at the letter, then at the phone. I had to call Dr. Albright and Dr. Lee. I had to tell Elena that the dream was already turning into a nightmare. We had fought the corporate giant, but now we were facing the government itself, all because I had been paid to ignore the maid's daughter and then chose not to. I drove back to Maria's apartment, the DHS letter crumpled in my hand. Maria was sewing a tiny tear in Elena's sweatshirt, a picture of domestic calm utterly at odds with the federal threat hanging over their heads. Elena was predictably reading. I laid the letter on the table. Maria stared at the official seal, her face draining of color. "They are trying to deport her, Frank," Maria whispered, the fear finally breaking her. "He is trying to take her away." Elena didn't panic. She picked up the letter and read it carefully, her lips moving silently over the legal jargon. "Espionage and unauthorized access," she stated, looking up at me. "Mr. Thorne is claiming my knowledge of the I.O. failure was gained through illegal means, not academic insight. He is trying to frame the solution as a trade secret, not a simple physical diagnosis." "Exactly," I said. "He knows he can't beat your brain, so he's trying to beat your paperwork. DHS doesn't care about perfect GRE scores. They care about visas and national security." I immediately called Dr. Albright. I read him the letter. There was a long, cold silence on the line. "That son of a gun," Albright finally roared. "He's using the full weight of his political connections to bury this. He's trying to make this a national security issue to prevent the public from knowing his chief failure was a reversed cable." "What do we do, Doctor? They want her in San Jose in 72 hours. We don't run, Frank. We fight, and we don't go in blind. I'm calling Vivian Lee. She has connections in Washington from her days advising the National Science Foundation. And we need a lawyer who understands both immigration and intellectual property, and who isn't afraid of Elias Thorne." Albright was right. This wasn't a skirmish. It was total war. The next 2 days were a blur of conference calls and legal planning. Dr. Lee, once she understood the gravity of Thorne's move, was furious. She saw it as an attack on meritocracy and academic freedom. She secured an emergency meeting with a prestigious pro bono legal team specializing in civil liberties. The lawyers worked through the night, building our defense. The core argument was simple. Elena's diagnosis was based on generalized scientific principles, computational fluid dynamics, not stolen data. We needed an expert, witness to testify to her genius and the trivial nature of the secret she revealed. That expert witness, of course, was Dr. Lee. On Friday morning, we drove to the DHS field office in San Jose. I had scrubbed up, wearing the only suit I owned, the one I usually wore to weddings and funerals. Elena wore a clean, pressed white shirt and her usual faded jeans, carrying her massive textbook like a shield. We were not alone. Dr. Lee, looking formidable in a dark power suit, met us in the lobby, flanked by 2 sharp, young lawyers. The meeting took place in a sterile, fluorescent-lit room. We faced 2 DHS agents. One was quiet and professional, Agent Reyes. The other, Agent Miller, no relation, was clearly running the show, radiating cold suspicion. Agent Miller started immediately, reading from Thorne's formal complaint. Ms. Elena, Maria's last name, you are accused of utilizing unauthorized access to proprietary data systems at Ascension Technologies, resulting in the acquisition of highly sensitive infrastructure schematics. This information pertains to the Genesis project, which is linked to foreign financial stability and therefore constitutes a matter of national security. Furthermore, Mr. Frank Miller, you are accused of facilitating this breach while under the employment of Ascension Technologies. He looked at Elena, his expression hard. We have evidence that you were physically present in unauthorized areas of the facility and that you were communicating specific, proprietary technical details to Mr. Miller, who then used them to interfere with corporate operations. Where did you obtain this information? Elena remained calm. She looked at the agent, then at Dr. Lee, who gave her a subtle nod. Agent Miller, Elena began, her voice clear and measured. I obtained the information through observation and the application of advanced mathematics. The information was not proprietary, it was foundational physics. That's a ridiculous claim, Agent Miller scoffed. You diagnosed a wiring fault in a multi-billion-dollar system. That requires insider knowledge. Dr. Lee leaned forward, her presence dominating the table. Agent, I am Dr. Vivian Lee, Chair of Computational Physics at UC Berkeley. Ms. Elena has demonstrated a genius-level understanding of applied mathematics. She submitted a paper to my department detailing the I/O bottleneck theory, which she derived from the simple observation of data flow behavior. Her diagnosis of the reversed cable was an application of scientific principle, not the theft of a trade secret. She was a cleaning crew dependent, Agent Miller shot back, channeling Thorne's contempt. She belongs nowhere near those schematics. The schematics were left unsecured on a desk in the executive suite, one of our lawyers interjected smoothly. If the information was truly sensitive to national security, why was it accessible to the cleaning staff? Mr. Thorne's complaint seems to focus less on security and more on silencing a potential whistleblower regarding his company's incompetence. Then, Elena delivered the payload. She opened her textbook, flipping quickly to a dense diagram. She began explaining the recursive data loop, using the same academic authority she had used with Dr. Albright. The configuration of the 40-pin ribbon cable assembly is a known vulnerability in that generation of hardware documented in open-source research journals dating back to 2012. Mr. Thorne's company failed to account for this basic physical vulnerability in their multi-billion-dollar project. I simply recognized the pattern of failure because I was studying the exact differential equations that govern this type of flow dynamics. She looked directly at Agent Miller. The real breach of national security, Agent, is that a system responsible for critical foreign infrastructure was designed with such a basic, easily exploitable flaw. Mr. Thorne is not trying to protect his data. He is trying to protect his reputation by deporting the person who exposed his fundamental mistake. The room went silent. Agent Reyes, the quieter agent, leaned over and whispered something to Agent Miller, his eyes flicking between Elena and Dr. Lee. The lawyers had armed Elena with the truth, and the truth, backed by a perfect GRE score and a prestigious professor, was a weapon Thorne hadn't anticipated. Agent Miller sat back, clearly defeated. The charge of espionage was crumbling. The optics of prosecuting a scientific prodigy for observing a design flaw, especially one who was about to start at UC Berkeley, were terrible. They realized they were caught in the middle of a corporate feud. We will review the evidence presented, Agent Miller said, his tone now cautious. Miss Elena, you are free to leave, but you must remain reachable. It was the best we could hope for, a non-committal release. As we were gathering our things, Agent Reyes stopped me at the door. Mr. Miller, he said quietly, we found the $5,000 cash in your locked drawer at Ascension. Mr. Thorne's people claimed it was part of a slush fund for facilitating illegal access. I looked him straight in the eye. It was a bribe, Agent. It was a payment to look the other way. I took the money, but I refused the job. I left the cash on his desk when I quit. If I was facilitating espionage, I wouldn't have quit or exposed the truth. Reyes nodded slowly. Noted, Mr. Miller. You made a difficult choice. Good luck. We walked out of the DHS office and into the California sunshine. The threat was gone, at least for now. Elena was safe. Maria, waiting outside in the car, rushed out and hugged Elena so tightly I thought her ribs might crack. We won, mija, Maria sobbed. We won. Dr. Lee, standing next to me, watched the reunion with a rare, genuine smile. Frank, she said, turning serious, you proved today that you are more than a security guard. You are a strategist and a loyal one. You risked your career, your savings, and your freedom for this girl. That kind of loyalty is rarer than genius. I just wanted to do the right thing, Doctor, I mumbled. Well, the right thing often needs protection, she replied. My department is expanding our computational lab facilities at Berkeley. We need a facilities manager, someone who understands security, logistics, and, frankly, how to deal with arrogant people who think they know everything. My jaw dropped. You're offering me a job? At Berkeley? It pays less than Ascension initially, Dr. Lee warned, but you'll have benefits, a stable environment, and you'll be guarding scientific progress, not corporate secrets. Your job will be to ensure that people like Elena can focus on their research without being harassed by the outside world. And you'll get a staff ID. No more waiting in the truck. I stared at her. I had walked away from one of the most powerful companies in the world, and now I was being invited into one of the greatest universities. I was trading steel and glass for knowledge and discovery. I accept, Dr. Lee, I said, a grin splitting my face. I accept. I started working. At Berkeley a week later, trading my heavy security uniform for a lanyard and a set of keys to the engineering buildings. It was a different world. The pressure wasn't about billions of dollars, it was about solving equations. The people were just as smart, but they were hungry for knowledge, not power. Maria found a new, smaller cleaning contract that paid decent wages and, crucially, allowed her to work regular daytime hours. She moved Elena's textbooks out of the apartment and into a small, furnished room near the Berkeley campus. Elena started her fellowship that fall. She wasn't just another student, she was a phenomenon. Within months, she was co-authoring papers with senior faculty and spending her nights in the lab, focused, brilliant, and finally, visible. I saw her almost every day. Sometimes I'd be checking the locks on the advanced computing lab, and I'd see her hunched over a console, looking exactly like she had in that cold, fluorescent break room at Ascension Technologies. Only now, she wasn't waiting. She was building. One evening, I found her working late, far past midnight. I walked into the lab, just checking the perimeter, my boots silent on the carpeted floor. She looked up and smiled, that full, confident smile that had replaced the nervous one. Frank, she said, setting down her pen. You're working. Late. Just finishing my rounds, Elena. Making sure the geniuses are safe. She leaned back in her chair, looking around the massive lab, filled with computers and whiteboards covered in complicated math. You know, she said softly, Mr. Thorne was right about one thing. I raised an eyebrow. Oh, what's that? He said you were a distraction and a liability. To him, because you refused to be paid to ignore what truly mattered. She picked up, her pen, ready to dive back into her work. Thank you, Frank, she said, not looking up. For what, Elena? For seeing me, she replied. I nodded, feeling the warmth spread through my chest. I walked out of the lab, closing the heavy secure door behind me. I was guarding the future now, and it felt a lot better than guarding a cold billion-dollar diamond. I was the security guard who had been paid to ignore the maid's daughter, but I had quit that job, and in doing so, I finally found the one job worth doing. The end.